Two impeachment complaints against Vice President Sara Duterte moved forward after the House Committee on Justice determined it to be sufficient in substance. Good morning. I'm Attorney Karen Jimeno, and this is At the Forefront. The impeachment process against Vice President Sara Duterte is moving forward in the House of Representatives. The House Committee on Justice has voted to declare the impeachment complaints sufficient in substance, with only one congressman dissenting. Meanwhile, Vice President Sara Duterte filed a perjury case against alleged bagman Ramil Madriaga, whose accusations are cited in the fourth impeachment complaint against the Vice President. What happens next in Congress? Will the perjury complaint be a major stumbling block in the impeachment proceedings? To answer this and other issues at the lower chamber, we'll be speaking with Bicol Saro Party-List Representative Terry Ridon. He's also a member of the House Justice Committee. Good morning, Congressman Terry.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Congressman Terry, the third and fourth impeachment complaints against Vice President Sara Duterte have now been ruled to be sufficient in form and substance. But could you give us an idea what the legal threshold was to determine it to be sufficient in substance?
Well, simple lang naman ho yung pinag-usapan sa sufficiency in substance, no? Yung po bang mga ultimate facts ay na-state, no? At meron ba siyang nexus doon po sa impeachable offenses na pinag-uusapan? At I think the committee had seen yesterday na all of the impeachable offenses like betrayal of public trust, culpable violation of the Constitution, graft and corruption, among others, na ipakita ho doon po sa mga allegations na binabanggit po ng complaints. No? So the misuse of confidential funds, yung pong paggamit ng safe houses na sobrang taas po ng rental price. No? At iba't iba pa yung SALN po niya, Vice President Sara Duterte, among other allegations that had been stated in these two complaints.
How is this different from the finding of or lack of sufficiency in substance naman nung tinakil yung impeachment complaints against President Bongbong Marcos? Because those also had allegations of misuse of unprogrammed funds and then drug use, which would also constitute an offense or a criminal offense under the revised penal code.
Well, I think very clear ho yung pagkakaiba ho ng documentation nung pong mga impeachment complaints po in the BBM complaint and in the Sara Duterte complaint. Kasi doon po sa BBM complaints, yung pong mga laman po noon, mga inauthentic documents. News articles, no? Unauthenticated video of Zaldico. Yun po yung BBM documentation. No? Yung po sa documentation po ng Sara Duterte impeachment complaint, ang laman po noon, COA reports, notices of disallowance, congressional reports. No? So, malaki po yung pagkakaiba doon po sa laman at substance po mismo nung po pinag-uusapan po natin.
Okay, so the third impeachment complaint cited alleged misuse of more than 612 million pesos worth of confidential funds and allegations of corruption at the Education Department when it was headed by the Vice President. But during Wednesday's impeachment, you said the signing of disbursement documents for confidential funds was not a mere ministerial act, and therefore this cannot be invoked as a defense in the impeachment proceedings against Vice President Sara. But may findings na po ba ang COA with respect to all of this amount ng 612 million in confidential funds?
Partial pa lang po. Merong ND, which is the Notice of Disallowance, no? And I think on appeal sa Commission proper. So po, yun po yung 2022 confidential fund, no? So I think yung po remaining tranche, yan po ay I guess subject pa ho ng proceedings po ng COA.
But would that still pass that threshold ng sufficiency in substance? Kasi di ba, according to the House Rules of Impeachment, for it to be sufficient in substance, the facts alleged must constitute the offense charged. So in this case, kung meron pang ina-appeal sa COA, would the facts alone that you're citing, like 612 million pesos of confidential funds, kung hindi pa nasasabing merong talagang misuse or disallowances na final, would that by itself, di ba, constitute the facts charged?
Hindi naman yung notice of disallowance lang.
The
yung
offense charge.
Hindi lang
yeah.
naman notice of disallowance or AOM. Yung audit observation memo yung basis for it. Kumbaga, yung pong mga dokumento na yan, may mga kalakip po na mga documentation pa ho yun eh. Why the COA stated that there's an AOM or there is an ND. So, ibig sabihin, I think Congress can operate independently and separately from the findings of COA. Kasi COA is basically an audit function. Congress is undertaking an impeachment function. So, basically, kung yung po mga ebidensya and the body of evidence ay pareho, I think Congress can basically take a crack at it.
Wala bang prejudicial question dito? In terms of the offenses, di ba, na parang kailangan malaman muna kung meron talagang misuse in order for it to, be an impeachable offense.
Tingin ko wala naman kasi audit naman po, ang in order po doon, you have to return the money. Dito po sa impeachment proceedings, removal of an impeachable officer. So, ibig sabihin, even if we are talking about the same body of evidence, no, that arose in which an ND or AOM resulted to, Congress and the COA can basically have an entirely different view of it.
Well, Cagayan de Oro Representative Rufus Rodriguez asserts that the alleged irregularities committed by Vice President Sara when she was DepEd Secretary is outside the Congress impeachment jurisdiction. And ito naman because gumagawa siya ng jurisdiction, ang differentiation between an impeachable officer, diba, and the capacity as a DepEd Secretary. Is that a valid point?
Well, firstly, I have to state for the record that Congressman Rodriguez voted for substance yesterday, despite such a vigorous defense, of the Vice President's actions. That needs to be stated. But secondly, again, the question for impeachable officers is not just whether I can actually split a person into two different positions as Vice President and DepEd Secretary. The question basically is about tenure. The tenure of the Vice President is from 2022 to 2028. No? So, ang question doon, when were the impeachable acts and offenses made? During the tenure po ba yun? And irrespective of whether she was DepEd Secretary, pagka ginawa niya ho yun as Deputy Secretary, but within that tenure, impeachable act pa rin po yun.
Okay, so that, yun yung pag-determine yun ng jurisdiction would be during her tenure as Vice President, not necessarily in what capacity she's acting.
That's correct.
The third complaint also cites VP Sara's alleged threat to the First Family and former Speaker Martin Romualdez. And that time, si Congressman Bong Suntay was saying that if she was serious about that threat, she would not announce it. But you have also Congresswoman Degamo saying that medyo may similarities ito dun sa threat to her husband, the late Governor Roel Degamo, which eventually became true. But objectively, for me as a lawyer, under a revised penal code, there's an offense where you can call grave threats, where you threat someone with the commission of a crime. But in this case, since conditional lang yung pagpatay, kung sakaling mamatay si Vice President Sara, sabi niya, then I doubt this would even fall under grave threats as an offense. But assuming that this could be grave threats under the revised penal code, would the threats by themselves be an impeachable offense?
Well, tingin ko kasi it shows the fitness of the person to actually hold public office. No? But again, to be clear, it wasn't just that instance in which the Vice President made a threat to the President. She was going to contract a killer if she gets killed. Di ba? She said something else. There was an instance in which she wanted to decapitate the President.
Was that part of the impeachment complaint?
Obviously, yes. So, that's an entirely different incident.
But nung sinabi niya yun, sabi niya, naisip ko.
It was
diba?
never conditional, Kumbaga, wala yun. Ano yun? It's unacceptable. Yung po nga ganun. 2 instances yun of threat to the President.
But pag sinabi mo naman iniisip mo, like, it's not necessarily you're committing a crime, right? Or pagka sinabi mong
That's
naisip
basically
kong nakawin, hindi naman yun threat na gagawin mo. Diba? Pag hindi mo...
It depends on the person who actually heard it. So as far as Congress is concerned, and tumawid na ho tayo, we were convinced na on those 2 instances, whatever you say, if you just thought of it, or it's basically conditional, we deem it as a credible threat against the President, and therefore, it is impeachable.
Okay, but how do you distinguish that from basically just assessing facts alleged that constitute an offense from making a judgment call whether that would be an impeachable offense?
Well, Congress gets to determine that eh. Hindi ba? And again, going back to yung example na lang ho talaga ni Congresswoman Digamo. What was she saying? It started out as a conditional threat. And then it went into an actual threat. And then the husband died. Hindi ba? So, yun pa lang.
Pero para sa akin, may pinagkaiba yun because that had a progression into an offense being consummated. Pero dito kasi, it's a threat that is also considered a conditional threat as what the late Juan Ponce Enrile also said that hindi siya criminal offense if it's conditional.
Oh well, yun din sabi ni Congressman Rodriguez kahapon. Parang the fact doon, people are still very much alive today. What is the logic of that and the logical conclusion of that? Antayin pa ho nating may mapatay before we actually act. No, so which is why tumawid ho yung impeachment complaint that everyone in that committee was convinced except one na these threats cannot be allowed to proceed.
Okay, so the fourth complaint centers on alleged omissions in VP Sara's statement of asset liabilities and net worths and claims of unexplained wealth disproportionate to her lawful income. So, pag-usapan natin itong SALN and why you had to introduce it into the record yesterday at the proceedings. But before you answer this, we'll have to take a short break. At the forefront, we'll be right back. Welcome back at the forefront. We continue our conversation with Bicol Saro Party-List Representative Terry Ridon. So Terry, let's talk about the SALN issue now. So the fourth complaint centers on alleged omissions in VP Sara's SALNs and claims of unexplained wealth that are disproportionate to her lawful income. So during your presentation at the hearing, you revealed that the wealth of the Vice President increased from 18 million pesos in 2008 to 88.5 million in 2024. But if we look at that, that's a total of 16 years with an average, if we just do like a straight line method, an average of 4 million pesos of income per year. So, I mean, parang hindi naman siya ganun ka unreasonable. But ano yung naging basis to say that this amounts to unexplained wealth?
Wala pa namang determination of unexplained wealth. No? Kahapon, stinate lang ho yung definition po na unexplained wealth. No? And very clear ho yun. Meron kang lawful income at ano yung nakalagay sa SALN mo, kailangang pagbanggain yung dalawang mga figures po na yun. But again, we have left it to the determination of, we are leaving it to the determination of the House Committee members kung they feel that it is actually unexplained wealth. And I think further into the proceedings, ano ho yun, talagang we would be able to look at it a little bit more. No? Pero babalikan ho natin, magkano ba yung salary po ng Vice Mayor, Mayor, and Vice President? Ngayon, mataas ho yung sahod po ng Vice President, mga, I think around 250,000 to 300,000. So, probably meron siyang 3.6, maybe 3 million a year. Pero magkano ba dati? So, I think by any measure, hindi ata aabot ng 88 million yun today, net worth. No? So, ibig sabihin, even if we talk about a 16-year gap.
But you're not discounting yung mga passive income or other assets owned or maybe from businesses with the husband, I don't know. But
kailangan natin yung makita pagka iniisa-isa po yung SALN from 2007 to 2020 to 2024. Kasi actually, ang pinagsimulan talaga niyang SALN yung 2007. Hindi lang yung available sa lamesa po namin yesterday. Pero pinagsimulan po na 2007, I think mga 7 million lang. Kaya nga, in one of the news reports, ang sinasabi, tumalon po ng 1,220%. Yung pong kanyang net worth from 07 to 24.
So which is in the past 16 years.
Yeah.
But Congressman Terry, I was watching the whole proceedings and at some point, one of the members of the House also raised the issue na walang attachment ng SALNs doon sa impeachment complaints. Why did the introduction of the SALNs come from you? Why was it it was your act that put it on record?
Well, wala naman hong pumipigil sa mga House members to actually introduce new information kasi this is for the determination ng mga miyembro po ng komite.
Oh, pero I guess like my question would be, nung time ni BBM, if there were PBBM, may mga questions dun sa allegations na ang naka-attach lang ay news articles, could it not have been supported by additional verified documents as well by members of
Pwede
the House?
rin naman sigurong ginawa yun. Those that wanted to impeach the president, they could have I think, introduced it, but they didn't do so during that proceeding. Pero, yun nga, but again, going back, Congressman Rodriguez kasi was asking for public records. He was stating previously na there are no public records, which is why we were forced to basically present, no, the public records are actually available. These are the SALNs.
Just yesterday, during the time when the House Committee also voted on the sufficiency in substance, it was the same time that Vice President Sara Duterte also filed a perjury complaint against Ramil Madriaga, who claims to be her former bagman. Would this affect the impeachment proceedings? I mean, what if merong findings doon sa libel as a perjury complaint na meron siyang false claims, itong si Madriaga? Would that affect the impeachment proceedings?
Hindi ko wala naman ho. Tatakbo ho yung perjury criminal proceedings independently of the impeachment proceedings namin po. No? So, ibig sabihin, we will still invite Mr. Madriaga. We will still coordinate with the court that has jurisdiction on him para paharapin po siya and to give truth to his affidavit. And to be clear, hindi naman ho kumbinsido yung pong lahat ng mga miyembro po ng Kamara doon po sa affidavit. Kasi ang pagtingin namin, okay, you're stating all of these things, but you really still have to give truth to these allegations. But even if we remove his allegation actually, as far as I'm concerned, hindi ko tatayo po yung po mga impeachment complaints against the Vice President, even if we take the Madriaga affidavit out.
So after this voting, the Vice President would have 10 days to respond.
Yeah.
And kung sakali yung complainants will also have a time to reply. So anong estimate nyo? Gaano pa katagal aabutin po sa House bago potentially umabot sa Senate?
I think may tentative date na pong binabanggit, the week of April 8. Pwede pong magkaroon ng next hearing, so determination of sufficiency in grounds, and then we can proceed with a hearing proper. No? So yun po yung timeline. And hopefully, we are done with proceedings by around May.
Around May, okay.
To vote in plenary.
Abot man to sa Senate around June.
Malamang, ganyan po yung pero syempre, ultimately, it is dependent on the plenary, but more or less yan po yung timelines na tinitingnan po ng komite.
Could the outcome of the vote in the Justice Committee, with only one voting against, calling it sufficient in substance, be interpreted as an early signal that the House leadership intends to move this impeachment complaint aggressively against the Vice President?
Hindi naman. Tingin ko, it is just a reflection of the wisdom of the committee members na talagang all of them are convinced on substantiality of the complaint. No? So, hindi naman ho kami nagmamadali. Kaya nga, we would want to undertake all of the periods that are necessary for the Vice President to respond and for the complainants to also submit their additional documents.
Meron bang mga nasa Congress na concerned with the impacts of this with the upcoming 2028 elections? Because Vice President Sara is still polling very high in surveys, including for the presidency.
Well, like what we had stated previously, laser focus naman po yung Justice Committee members dun sa mandate. No impeachment. So, whatever feelings that they might have on their future plans and in 2028, tingin ko they are willing to set it aside para matapos lang po ito pong proceedings na ito. Kasi, I mean, in as much as it is a political proceeding, it is also a legal and constitutional proceeding. So, we have to undertake the mandate.
Pag-usapan naman natin yung naging controversial statement ni Congressman Bong Suntay relating to Ann Curtis. Will there be an ethics complaint filed against him, and what potential sanctions can he face?
Well, I think meron ng ethics proceedings. Kasi sa plenary po kagabi, yan na po yung pinag-usapan So hindi na ho necessary yung actual complaint by a private party. So I think maghihiring na po yung ethics committee para dingin po yung nangyari sa Justice Committee proceedings.
Pag ganyan ba, anong type of sanctions ang usually napapataw?
Ayoko paunahan siyempre ethics committee, pero siyempre yung range po, pwedeng censure, reprimand, suspension, expulsion.
Expulsion pwede
I mean, hindi ko sinasabi na expel
yun yung
siya.
range ng penalties.
Pero syempre, it depends really on how aggrieved, for example, Ann Curtis was or her family was. So, kumbaga, if they really wanted to proceed against Congressman Suntay, I think they have actually every right to proceed against him.
And finally, another hot topic at this juncture is the anti-political dynasty bill. So there were several lawmakers that withdrew their support on the bill that was approved by the House Committee on Suffrage and Electoral Reforms. So the bill used the proposal from House Speaker Bogie D and Majority Leader Sandro Marcos as the working draft, but placed the limit on relatives up to the second degree of consanguinity and affinity. So, pagka ito ba, anong mangyayari ngayon? What can we expect? Ibig sabihin ba titigil yung pag-progress nitong anti-political dynasty bill?
Tingin ko hindi naman. Ang sinasabi ng committee chair, yan po yung magiging baseline lang po ng magiging debate at the level of plenary, no? So, pwede pa rin mag-introduce ng amendments yung pong mga House members.
Maari pang bumalik to sa up to fourth degree of consanguinity and affinity.
I think those that are really pushing for the banning of political dynasties will still insist on yung pong second degree at the level of plenary. So, marami pa pwede mangyari actually. Mahabang debate pa rin po yung political dynasty bill.
And in your personal assessment, kaya kayang ipasa to ng House before the SONA of the President in July?
Well, we have to see, no? Pero we have to go back to what the President said. That is a presidential commitment. It was part of the LEDAC. So we are expecting the Senate and the House to actually move forward with it in the soonest time.
And finally, flood control, kasi you were very active also in hearing the irregularities dun sa flood control projects. Meron na bang updates as to where we are, kung nagamit ba yung mga reports that came out of the Congress hearings?
I think nagagamit naman, no? Kasi yung Bulacan proceedings are still underway at the level of the Department of Justice, no? Siyempre may mga nakulong na ho. Pero inaantay pa rin ho natin yung pong iba pa hong mga legislators, high-level executives, no? Na ma-issuehan po ng warrant of arrest. Kasi sa tingin ko yan ho talaga inaantay ng publiko.
Oo, pero tahimik na ngayon. So, ibig sabihin, may nangyayari pa rin behind the scenes.
Na, ibig sabihin, in as much as everyone's interested in the impeachment, I think the public is still interested in justice on flood control corruption. So, antayin ho natin. And, well, very important na kalampigin po talaga yung mga ombudsman tsaka DOJ on the matter.
Okay. Thank you so much, Congressman Terry Ridon.
Thank you.
The impeachment process, as provided under the Constitution, is one of the most powerful mechanisms of accountability in government. But it is also one of the most politically charged. As the House continues its proceedings on the complaints against Vice President Sara Duterte, the country will be closely watching how both Congress and the institutions involved handle the next stages of this constitutional process. Be timely informed, be insightful of the news. Always stay at the forefront.